Rain fell like shattered glass from a darkened sky, each drop slicing the air with the cold indifference of a world too busy to care. The storm had been swelling for hours, dragging its fury across the streets of a quiet American town where most had already taken shelter behind thick walls and warm blankets. But out there, under a rusted highway overpass, curled beside a torn fast food bag in a puddle the size of a small lake, lay a tiny bundle of fur, a kitten, no older than a few weeks, soaked to the bone, shivering so violently that its ribs tapped against the concrete like a ticking clock counting down something dreadful. Cars roared past overhead. Their tires threw up water and gravel. Their engines growled, but not one slowed. Not one brake light flickered. The world moved on, as it always did, and the kittener, barely conscious, kept its eyes fixed on the place where the road met the horizon, as if still hoping someone might see. But no one did. People were in a hurry. People had places to be, lives to live, and storms to outrun. Who stops for a kitten in the rain? An hour passed. Maybe more. The water had pooled under the kitten now, turning the sidewalk into a frozen sponge that sucked away what little body heat it had left. Its back leg was twisted at an unnatural angle, clearly broken, possibly crushed under something. No one would ever know. All that was certain was the pain, the kind that pulsed with every shallow breath, the kind that blurred its tiny eyes and made the world tilt. Hunger clawed at its belly, but the cold was worse. So much worse. The kind of cold that made even pain fade, replacing it with something deeper. Silence. And then, through the relentless sound of the rain, there was something else. Footsteps. Slow ones. Measured. Hesitant. A woman, late 20s, maybe early 30s, wrapped in an oversized hoodie, head down, sneakers, soaked through. She wasn't supposed to be there. Her car had broken down a mile back, and with her phone dead and no ride nearby, she had no choice but to walk home through the storm. She didn't even notice the kitten at first. Who? It was small, colorless, with dirt, half submerged in shadow. But just as she passed the corner of the overpass, something stopped her. A sound, a breath, a cry. She couldn't be sure, but it was enough. She turned back, scanning the area. Nothing but wet trash and darkness. She almost walked on. Almost. But then she saw it. Not a movement, but the glint of eyes. Dull, desperate, barely alive. And in that moment, her tired heart cracked just a little wider. She stepped closer, crouched down, and the smell of wet fur and blood hit her like a punch. "Oh my God," she whispered. She didn't know what to do at first. She hadn't rescued anything before. She wasn't even sure if it was still breathing. But instinct, that raw, human spark, took over. She slid her hoodie off and gently scooped the kitten inside. It didn't resist. Couldn't it just shivered against her chest? A tiny flicker of life that had refused to go out. She cradled it tight, feeling the heat of its pain soak into her like a second storm. "Hang on," she whispered again, even though she didn't know if it could hear her. The walk home was slower now. Every gust of wind bit harder. Every puddle soaked deeper. She shielded the kitten the best she could, heart thudding in rhythm with its fading pulse. Her mind raced. No vets open at this hour, no car, no idea what she was doing. But none of that mattered. What mattered was the fragile thing in her arms, clinging to life with a broken leg and a will that refused to die. When she finally made it to her apartment, she was shaking nearly as bad as the kitten. Her clothes were drenched. Her hands were numb. But she didn't stop. She laid out a towel, turned up the heat, and wrapped the kitten like it was the most precious thing on earth. And to her, in that moment, she searched her kitchen for something. Anything. Soft enough to feed it. A little warm milk, a dropper from an old medicine bottle, and hours of gently coaxing life back into that tiny body. The night dragged on. Every few minutes she checked its breathing, its eyes. She talked to it, even though it never responded, told it stories, gave it a name, Stormy, because that's where she found it, and because somehow, the name just fit. And when the kitten finally moved, just a little, just enough to lift its head and let out a whisper of a meow, she cried, ugly, full-body tears that came from somewhere buried deep, because in saving this broken creature, something inside her had been saved too. The next day, she called off work, took Stormy to a local shelter clinic run by volunteers. The vet there was kind, older, the kind of man who didn't speak much but looked you in the eyes when he did. "You got here just in time," he said, gently examining the kitten's leg. Any later, and he didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. She knew. The leg was indeed broken. Badly, but not beyond hope. It would take weeks of healing, maybe surgery. The vet offered to help, no charge. Said they had a small fund for cases like this. Rare, but real. She offered to pay anyway. He smiled, touched her shoulder, and said something she wouldn't forget. "You already paid." "You stopped?" Stormy stayed at the clinic for a while, getting stronger, day by day. And every evening, after work, she'd visit, sit by the cage, talk, laugh, sometimes cry. The kitten would watch her with those same eyes that had once been lifeless under the overpass. But now, they sparkled. Now, they saw her, trusted her. Weeks passed, the cast came off. Stormy limped at first, then walked, then ran. The day the vet cleared her to go home, the woman brought a soft carrier, a new collar, and a promise. You'll never be cold again. Not on my watch. Back home, Stormy took to the apartment like it had always been hers. She'd sleep curled on the woman's chest, purr loud enough to drown out any storm. And though she'd always limp a little, always carry that scar, she wore it like a badge, proof that she'd survived, that someone, finally, had stopped. But the story doesn't end there, because saving Stormy did something else. It changed the woman. Before that night, she'd been tired, lonely, another face in a crowd, just going through the motions. But now, every time Stormy curled up beside her, she felt purpose. She started volunteering at that same shelter, started talking to people more, smiling, living. The kitten she saved had in turn saved her. Funny how life works that way. And sometimes, late at night when the rain comes down hard, she still thinks about that overpass, about how close the world came to losing something so precious, about how no one else stopped, about how many never do. But mostly, she thinks about what it means to choose kindness when no one's watching, what it means to hear a cry in the dark and say, not on my watch. If you're still here, still reading, maybe there's a reason. Maybe there's a part of you that believes in second chances, in the quiet, unseen moments that change everything. Maybe you've been that kitten, or maybe you're the one meant to stop next time. So, if you ever hear a cry, in the rain, in the dark, wherever, don't look away. Don't tell yourself someone else will do it. Be the one who stops. Be the one who saves. Because sometimes, saving one life can end up saving two. And if this story touched something in you, even just a little, let that be the start of something real. Like, share, subscribe. Let's make kindness louder than the storm.